Hi, I'm Eric Ford for Made Here. For several years, Made Here has featured a selection of current work from students in the broadcast media production and filmmaking programs at Champlain College. This season, we've got 4 films: Deadlift, about a weightlifter in competition; Steep Slope, about climate and Vermont ski areas; Razing for Progress, about the history of urban renewal in Burlington; and Rescues, a short fictional film. You can watch the Champlain College Showcase and other great Made Here films streaming on vermontpublic.org and through the PBS app. Enjoy the films, and thanks for watching.
Last lift of the morning session, everyone. We got Jordan here with 600 pounds. Fire is loaded for Jordan.
Hello, I'm Jordan Bordeaux, and I'm a sophomore computer and data science double major at the University of Vermont, and I compete competitively in the USAPL Powerlifting Federation as a 100 kg lifter. So I got into competitive lifting sort of as a result of my family's gym that we owned in St. Albans, Vermont. So we had opened up the gym in January of 2019, and then I worked there and I worked out there for a couple years, but over time I kind of just grew to enjoy going to the gym for the sake of going to the gym. I just really enjoyed going in and lifting.
Yeah, so powerlifting is a competition of the squat, bench, and deadlift. So the squat is the one where you put the barbell on your back, and you squat down, and you have to your hips have to go past your knees in order for it to count. The bench is the one where you lay down on a flat bench and you bring it down to your chest and you push it up. And deadlift is just the one where the barbell is on the floor and you pick it off the floor until you lock out your hips. Our personalities will mesh well, our goals mesh well, that this is someone who I actually want to put a lot of effort into, and they're willing to go through the standard that I hold people to, which he has done a good job of. From a macro perspective, Jordan's progress has been very good, but there's been times on a micro scale where it has been poor, and that's going to be something that everyone faces because it's hard to get stronger. We're not like gorillas, and we don't just have unlimited amounts of strength. So you really need to find what works and what will be the right stimulus to make sure that you continue to progress someone without breaking them, so to speak.
And then I found that I really just liked pushing myself on squat, bench, and deadlift in particular. And so then I just really started pursuing that, and I believe it was March 2021 was the first powerlifting meet I competed in. And from that point on, I just kind of really fell in love with the sport and just the process of training to get stronger. So from there, I just kept training like that. I really want to just keep lifting and keep pursuing it until I win some kind of national championship, whether that happens in my 20s, 30s, 40s onwards. I really just want to stick with it until I reach some kind of high level like that. It's not easy to, for years on end, make sure that you're getting enough sleep, make sure you're eating enough, tracking your food or eating enough like every single day, sometimes forcing yourself to eat when you don't want to just because you know you need to eat more to get stronger. And then like in the gym, like you might be exhausted, like dead tired, but you still have to go in there and go hard because you know that if you don't, then you're not going to be getting anything out of it. I would definitely say it's kind of like a second family in some ways, like the group of people that we always see at Lift VT when we go. Me and my girlfriend Ella started calling them the Kilo Crew. And so we're always looking forward to getting there and like, oh, who from the Kilo Crew is going to be there tonight?
Nice.
My name is Ella. I have just barely kind of gotten into powerlifting, but I've been lifting for a little while. Jordan is my coach, and he's also my boyfriend. I just had really for a while just wanted to get stronger. I grew up dancing. I started dancing when I was 3 and I danced for 15 years. And I really enjoyed it, but one thing I wanted was to just get stronger. And for a while, like, that I hoped would better my dance technique and just better like my control and stuff. But once I got into lifting, I found like that's just really what I wanted to do, and it was something I found really fun. And then powerlifting specifically, I saw Jordan compete a little bit, and I really didn't know much about the sport of powerlifting before I started like even just lifting at the gym and talking to Jordan about it, because it was an interest of his a little bit before it was an interest of mine.
Currently I'm lifting 5 days a week. Like I have to really make sure that I'm efficiently utilizing my time so that I can attend all my schoolwork and then also have time to go to the gym for like 2 to 3 hours.
We're going to Target. So right now we're going to restock on milk and Oreos and a couple protein shakes. The essentials.
So for someone who's a competitive power lifter, because their focus isn't going to be more on endurance and it's going to be lifting heavy and typically lifting maximal or near maximally often, you're going to need a lot of carbs predominantly, because carbs have the unique attribute when you look at macronutrients. So predominantly when looking at competitive lifters, you're typically going to see a high carbohydrate diet and a high protein diet. Not to say that fat's not important, but for this population, high carbs, high protein going to be very common.
The issue with the mega stuff is it's almost too big, and so like even though there's a lot of cream and that goes well with the milk, there's not quite enough, like the cookie to cream ratio is all off, so a lot of the times they'll just fall in the milk and then you have to like retrieve it with a spoon or something. It's really tough. It's unfortunate.
Huge Oreo fan. Love Oreos. A lot of the times my little snack runs will be something along the lines of like Oreos and some Fairlife milk, higher protein shakes, and just a couple other like high carb snacks which I can use before the gym. Pop-Tarts are a favorite.
Yeah, I'm signed up to do my first meet on April 22nd in Agawam, Massachusetts. And I'm going with a group of friends, and Jordan is also part of that group. So I'm really excited to just get on the platform, really just see how strong I am. Like, this is the first time I'm ever doing a meet like this, so it's just really exciting to see what that's going to be like.
She made it look a little harder this time just to confuse us, but it was a good lift.
So I'm going down to Agawam, Mass for my 3rd full power meet and 4th meet overall. I'm going down with a bunch of friends, and so it should be a pretty fun time with all of us competing together. I've been looking forward to competing at this meet for a little while now, because this is by far the best prep I've ever had going into a meet. A few milestone lifts I'm looking to hit are a 551 squat, a 300 plus bench, and a 600 deadlift. The objective of the meet is to get the highest possible good lift, which is 2 or more white lights out of 3 possible white lights for each lift and secure the best possible total.
You're always gonna have those nerves running through you. And so it's easy if you feed into that to just sort of like lose yourself and lose a lot of the form that you practice like every day and forget some of the cues that you do to keep your technique as crisp as possible in training.
Bars loaded for Jordan, 275 pounds. They're back at the top of the order of Josh, followed by Terry and Will.
On bench, I started with 275. I've hit the weight a ton of times before in training, and so on paper should have been a pretty effortless first attempt. That being said, my first shot at it was a pretty rough misgroove. I slid on the bench on my right side quite a bit, and it definitely threw me off. On my second attempt, I was able to bench the weight pretty easily, but I was still a little shooken up by missing my first attempt and just ended up jumping the rack command, which resulted in me getting 2 red lights.
Oh, he makes it look easy.
For my final attempt, I took the same weight a third time, dialed in, and hit it to secure A total.
Someone didn't tell Jordan this is third attempt. Easy, Jordan. Bars loaded for Jordan, 496 pounds.
I started with 496 on the squat. I got it and it moved pretty well, so I felt confident going up to the top end range for my second attempt at 529.
Come on, Jordan.
I hit that weight and it still felt like it was moving pretty well. And whenever a squat feels like it's moving well, I know I have quite a bit left in me since I tend to have a very slow and grindy squat.
We got Jordan at 562 pounds. A teenager squatting 562 pounds.
I was very nervous about loading 562 since it was still heavier than anything I'd ever had on my back before, and it was definitely one of the hardest squats I've ever done.
My Jordan!
But I got it, and I was super happy about being able to scrape out every single possible kilo that I had in me on the day.
That's a good lift, Jordan. All right, Jordan, your turn.
The last lift of the day was deadlifts. Deadlifts are always a bit of a challenge on meet day since you're still tired from the first 2 lifts, and it can be tough to really get back in the zone. Going into the meet, the best lift I had managed to complete in training and hold on to was 579, and I felt confident with our tapering strategy that I'd be good for 600 on the day. I started with 529 for my first attempt, and it moved super well.
He brushed away the bad juju and lifted it up.
So I felt very solid about going up to the top end range for my second attempt at 568.
568 pounds.
I managed to take that, no issue.
Making it easy all day today.
And I felt confident that I was good for 600 on the day. So for my last attempt, I loaded 601.
Jordan here with 600 pounds. Fire is loaded for Jordan.
And managed to make it, perhaps even with another 5 or 7.5 kg in the tank.
I'm gonna kind of take a step back from this a little bit. My dad would always tell me, like every day walking out the door, just like be all you can be. And that sort of became ingrained into my psyche, and that's sort of like my own personal mantra. And so for me, it's like I love the sport, I love training in it, and I love competing in it. And so I really feel driven to like be as good as I possibly can at it.
What's the goal?
Well, I want to be a national champion.
And in first place, Jordan.
A number of variables, we see that winter has gotten about 10% worse in the last 10 years.
I think that climate change is real and it's happening.
You know, operations kind of swung left and right, so absolutely we're 100% impacted by global warming.
I'm working with Mother Nature year-round, and I would do anything to, you know, save the sport, but who knows, maybe we'll just put a dome over the area.
Vermont's ski industry represents big money, about $1.6 billion in the 2022 season. 350,000 skiers hit the slopes and around 13,000 people are employed, but that industry is facing some major challenges. Because of warm weather, some resorts had to close temporarily and stockpile man-made snow for colder conditions.
I think there has definitely been differences. You know, I remember when I was a kid, you know, we would always say, oh, there's like a February thaw and it might get warm for a couple days, you know, in February or you know, sometime in the winter. But what I've noticed is it seems like that just happens more frequently.
This sparked the question, what happened to Vermont's snowy climate? Many experts believe the answer is clear: climate change.
In Denver. Seriously? You're teaching them. I've taught skiing for 45 years. I started at age 15 as a junior instructor, and I've gone all through the whole ranks of the instructing world. I've worked at Bolton for 20 years and here for 23 now. So I just enjoy the teaching aspect. That's the impact for me. I love watching the people get it, and from age 2 on up, we've got kids out here at a year and a half old at this point that are sliding with their mom and dad.
Cochran's is a tiny ski hill in Richmond that's historic, producing 6 Olympians in its time. But this legendary training ground is going through some change.
We didn't get snow until about 3 weeks ago, you know, appreciable snow this winter. And we're not up on a mountain here either. We're right down here at river level. The Winooski is 100 yards away there, so.
Well, it was definitely a hard year. It was definitely a hard year for us because it was warm. In a place like this, we don't have the elevation of most other ski areas. So the beginning of this year was a little rough.
This year's been better, but you know, we're lucky for that. And yeah, thank God for snowmaking.
Meteorologists see a broader change in the weather patterns. Haley Boulay forecasts weather for my Champlain 2244.
My voice here because it's such a cold wind, and combine that with the snow.
Well, climate change has definitely put a stop to a lot of our wintertime activities, not just the ski industry, but, you know, snowmobiling, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, all things that people come up here for the snow to, you know, pump our local economy. And if we don't have snow, people aren't coming.
The National Weather Service has an office in the Burlington airport. NWS staff track weather patterns and say they've noticed a change in snowfall over the past couple years.
I think the one thing that's kind of the most obvious to me is a lot more kind of marginal events. So this year specifically, I'm sure you guys have seen, there's been a lot of events where we're saying, is it going to be rain or is it going to be snow? Even in December, January, and February, we're having this conversation. And that wasn't a conversation we had 20 years ago. 20 years ago when we had these big storms, they were all snow.
Yeah, so Vermont has seen a rise in temperatures over the past few years in a variety of different ways. We're finding shorter cold snaps and less days below 32 degrees, which, obviously can impact the snowpack.
Bolton Valley Resort is a mid-sized ski area with 5,000 acres of high mountain forest, 71 trails, and 165 acres of skiable terrain. Like many other areas, Bolton is feeling the pressure of climate change.
We're all investing more and more in snowmaking, including little old Bolton Valley. We're certainly putting much more onus on the snowmaking. So places like Killington will be skiing and riding until the end of May. That's on snowmaking. That's not on natural snow.
The patterns are not patterns anymore, if you will. So, in order for us to keep consistent with our opening dates, definitely very reliant on snowmaking.
Can't afford, we don't have the resources to blow that much snow. It's wildly expensive. If you want to extend your season, start earlier and later, the 90% of the winters, you're going to be on snowmaking snow.
The changes are happening. We can almost see them happening kind of season to season, which feels like it's in real time. So it's pretty urgent. Even though the number of ski visitors to Vermont increased a little bit in 2022 compared to the previous year, the trend over the last 10 years has been down meaningfully.
When it comes to snow reporting, trying to predict future forecasts, Mount Mansfield is our reference point for all things snow.
Mount Mansfield has been Vermont's indicator for snow. At 4,395 feet, Mount Mansfield is the highest mountain in the state.
So on top of Mount Mansfield, there's about 50 inches of snow right now. Normally for this time of year, we have about 66 inches of snow, so we're running at about 16 inches below where we should be.
And again, then if you look at Mount Mansfield, which is at 3,900 feet, it tells a similar story. There, the snow stays a lot longer. It's like May 25th that they tend to lose their snowpack. And again, it's a couple days earlier in the last several years.
Due to the height of Mansfield, various elevations are measured to see how much snowfall they get. This data helps ski resorts figure out how much snow will be at a given elevation. Given the snow on Mansfield has been about 16 inches below average, that's been bad news for corresponding elevations at Bolton Valley.
Ultimately, it's hard to predict what we'll see next year when the years are just not kind of having a consistent pattern. So definitely a little troubling.
For many in the Vermont ski industry, what's troubling is the cost. Smaller resorts shoulder a heavier burden when making snow. Its production is tougher on the bottom line.
Yes, some reports have shown that the 2021 to 22 season experienced a $100 million decline in revenue.
As the weather continues to be erratic, how will ski areas thrive? Some places are turning their facilities into event spaces or summertime destinations.
We've also purchased the Ponds wedding venue and did a renovation of the Timberline Lodge to make both of those really first-class groups, sales, events, and weddings destinations. There's no more waiting. To make this a viable business, it really needs to be a year-round resort business. And a lot of that has to do with just winter getting a little shorter.
The Vermont ski industry is definitely looking at a period of significant decline, unfortunately, and so the urgency is really high. Again, if we have 13 million visitors per year, certainly many people come here during the summer.
The future of the industry is changing now that there's weather unpredictability. That uncertainty has many worried about what would happen if skiing and boarding were to melt away.
We carry this victory of the season, with a grain of salt, knowing that it's not necessarily going to be the same trend next year. So yeah, definitely something I'm wary about for sure.
The issue is urgent. A significant portion of those tourists come in the winter, and if the key winter sport of skiing, downhill skiing, alpine skiing, is declining because of these environmental factors, then we really have an urgent need to identify ways to replace that revenue in the economy.
Skiing has been a big part of my life for, as I said, much of my life. So it would be really sad. I mean, it would be unfortunate, and I think it's a great thing that a place like this exists for the community around here.
I just love outdoors, and I love being one with the world, right? And that's what you're doing when you're skiing. And you get on the mountain and you just see how huge it is, and what kind of geological consequences have forced that over the millennia, and to be part of that is just really special for me.
We'll hope for the best. We're still in Vermont, right?
Am I looking? You want me looking at you, Pat, generally,
You
or?
both write all the questions.
Okay.
Home. Even just hearing the word can flood the mind with memories. Children playing in the street, backyard vegetable gardens, that creaky screen door ever so slightly tilted off its hinges. It radiates warmth and gives us a sense of safety and belonging. But what if your home, neighborhood, your entire community was taken away and destroyed, all in the name of progress? The promise of not just a better tomorrow, but a completely different way of life. This was the reality for those living in Burlington, Vermont in the 1960s. Four main streets located in the heart of downtown Burlington, Vermont, South Champlain, Battery, Cherry, and Bank, became a vibrant, thriving community known today as Burlington's Little Italy. It was populated by Irish, French-Canadian, and, towards the latter half of the 20th century, Italian, Lebanese, and Greek immigrants. Today, there is barely any evidence the neighborhood ever existed.
My grandmother owned all of the property, which was a big house at 82 South Champlain Street with a little cottage in the back, which was 84.
A third-generation immigrant, Monica's grandparents came to Vermont in the 1880s from the Mount Lebanon area of Syria.
My mother was born in Barrie in 1915. My father's parents had also come from Lebanon, and he was born in Winooski.
The neighborhood was once densely populated with multi-generational family dwellings.
My grandmother lived in the Little Italy area, and my father had a house on Bank Street.
John's grandfather came to Burlington from Cervenara, Italy, at the invitation of the Marollas, a prominent family in the Little Italy community.
Everybody was friendly, had a lot of relatives around, maybe too many, they call it too many hands in the stew. It was a 20-room house that had 4 apartments of 5 rooms each. My grandmother occupied one, and my aunts and uncles occupied all the other ones.
Within walking distance from the neighborhood were schools, churches, restaurants, and shops.
I could walk downtown or walk to the waterfront. The waterfront was only 2 blocks away, and it was still pretty industrial. It had big oil tanks and things like that, but they had these big floating metal, platforms, I guess you'd call them. And my friend Carmi Nana and I would walk on the platforms and take our chances with the water. Our mothers didn't know we were doing that.
It was a place of refuge. He was maybe 2 or 3 houses away from home, but he was out on his own.
Burlington really benefited from the Lake Champlain to the west, and then the Winooski River to the east.
Lumber and textile mills began cropping up along the shores of Lake Champlain and the Winooski River, creating a wealth of job opportunities. Burlington quickly became a popular lumber and manufacturing port. and stood as the third largest lumber market in the world for a period of time. After the turn of the century, large numbers of those from Europe, Italy, Syria, Greece, and a small number from Germany and Lithuania began coming to Burlington as well. Some families operated small businesses, namely markets and bakeries, usually after having saved up enough money from working industrial jobs. These markets became institutions in the community, selling curated products native to the countries many of the immigrants in the community once came.
You know, there's almost a homesickness around not having the kind of food you're used to. And also just all the rituals and traditions that went on around eating and preparing food.
In addition to being purveyors of food, some of the markets were seen as community centers of the neighborhood.
Some of them help people fill out paperwork that they need to fill out, you know, something to do with citizenship or temporary residency, that sort of thing. Or, you know, they get a parking ticket. They've never had, you know, what's a parking ticket? So, you know, how do I do that?
The ISO store on Pearl Street, there were three brothers, Mario, Silvio, and Alphonse. And their practice was they would sell their food items, but grant people a charge account. But the story goes that Mario, who was in charge of the finances, at the end of the year, he would take all the IOUs and tear them up.
These markets were invaluable to both the communities they served and the proprietors who owned and operated them.
The fact that for newly arrived immigrants and refugees who perhaps left a country where they felt that like the world was out of control for them, you know, that if you can really think about how coming here and ultimately having your own business so you got to make the decisions would be so important.
Using the American dream of freedom and independence as a pathway to the middle class, residents and their children now had opportunities for financial freedom, education, and empowerment that previously might not have been possible. Despite the praises of the city being sung by those who lived in the Little Italy community, the Burlington establishment did not always meet immigrants with the same level of enthusiasm. Like many American cities, Burlington has a sordid history with the treatment of immigrant and minority populations. The theory and practice of eugenics had a strong hold on the country until the late 1940s and continued to influence how white Americans regarded those seen as other. Whether consciously or not, this and similar ideologies influenced the dawn of new American life, sparked by the victory of the Allied forces in World War II.
Immediately following the end of World War II, so 1950s, 60s, was a time of incredible enthusiasm and progress for America. We came out of it with incredible technological capabilities.
With the advent of the interstate highway systems, panic set in as local government agencies watched city dwellers flee crowded, poorly constructed urban neighborhoods for the comfort of the suburbs, where they could get more property for less money.
Americans' inner cities were in really rough shape. They were built somewhat haphazardly, not always with a unified plan. Didn't always have basic infrastructure for safe drinking water and sewage disposal and circulation of air and access to daylight. So there were problems. There were definitely problems.
The newly introduced concept of modernist architecture was a huge influence in the rebuilding of American cities across the country. Suddenly, major U.S. cities became targets for urban renewal, a concept introduced by the federal government through the establishment of the Housing Act of 1949.
I do think it's important to acknowledge that these programs started with very good intents, asking what can we do to improve the living situation. And again, with that modern optimism, say we can build it new, we can build it better, and we will solve the problem. And that looks great on paper. In reality, it really was a disaster.
Racism in urban planning and development was a norm in the 20th century. Zoning laws enforced racial and ethnic segregation of neighborhoods, and the advent of redlining made it near impossible for people of color to advance in their communities. Narratives of slum and blight were woven from those tasked with house visits in the urban renewal area. While poverty and substandard living conditions were undoubtedly present, the extent of it remains questionable. It started out as a way to improve the lives of those living in America's innermost cities. However, the narrative quickly shifted to one of blame and resentment towards the country's immigrant and minority populations.
When urban renewal passed, and it was an item on the ballot in Burlington, I think there was just a lot of fear, a lot of disbelief. They're going to take our homes. Who does that?
It was in 1963 that Burlington voters approved a $790,000 municipal bond in support of what was being called the Champlain Street Urban Renewal Project. The money, along with a $2.4 million federal grant, would be put toward the demolition of the Little Italy neighborhood with the hopes of building a better downtown.
You know, in Burlington, it's not a surprise that the Champlain Urban Renewal Project didn't target the hill section, because that's where the businessmen and community leaders who were spearheading urban renewal lived.
Eminent domain, the right of the government to take residential properties away from their owners with payment compensation, was the tool used in urban renewal neighborhoods to force out the residents. In Burlington, outside agencies were hired to complete land acquisition, giving each resident the amount of money they deemed worthy for the home. Demolition of the neighborhood began in 1966, and by 1968, the neighborhood was completely leveled. 300 buildings razed, 157 families ousted and left with not even a shell of the place they once called home. While demolition on the newly cleared land hit the ground running, building residences for those displaced by urban renewal was slower to start.
Relocating people was one of the promises they made. It was one of the promises they didn't keep. They didn't help anybody.
Almost a year after the demolition of the neighborhood, a site was finally chosen to build housing for those displaced by urban renewal.
Riverside Avenue, there's a big development built out there to house these people from the Champlain urban renewal area. And that's picking up a core population of downtown Burlington and moving them to the outskirts of the city.
My Aunt Catherine, who was the eldest of the 6 sisters, she was about 65. The woman didn't drive and was on a widow's pension, and the house was paid for. They gave her $6,000 for that little house, and she had to find another house safe and suitable. She found a new little ranch house on Village Green in the New North End. It was $14,000. She had to use her $6,000 to make a down payment and incur a mortgage at the age of 65, this widow, who didn't drive. She could walk everywhere she needed to go, and her house was paid for, and that's what urban renewal did to her. 65 years old, here's your money, and thank you very much. You can get out now.
In 1963, after a failed attempt to partner with construction company DeMattis Co., the city of Burlington contracted with Horizon Inc., a group consisting of local developers, networkers, and business owners. Horizon created what they named the Horizon Tower, a $2 million project resulting in a one-stop shop with commercial and retail space, apartments, a hotel, restaurants with views of Lake Champlain, swimming pools, tennis courts, movie theaters, and of course, lots of space to accommodate America's newest obsession, the automobile.
They wanted to defend and improve the commercial viability of Burlington as a downtown hub. Coupled with that was the change in the situation with regards to the growth of an urban suburban world. It contributed to the selection of the urban renewal site. It was that it was adjacent to Church Street.
Despite their vision, the Horizon Inc. development firm never managed to secure the funding needed to carry out the project. After years of extensions and delays on construction, the city canceled their contract in April of 1967. As time passed, sections of the urban renewal area were sold off to other private developers who built municipal government buildings and hotels, notably the Hilton and Marriott hotels that are present today along Battery Street.
It broke people's hearts, it tore up the neighborhood. It was very slow to build things.
Currently, the land is the subject of yet another construction project aimed at improving downtown life in the city.
It's planned to be primarily a residential project. So there's about 450 residential units on top of about 40,000 square feet of retail space. And in the middle, all the buildings kind of shield a 3-story parking garage.
Similar to the 1960s, one of the most pressing issues the city faces today is its lack of adequate, affordable housing for residents. Of the planned 450 new units to be built for the project, known officially as City Place, about 85 of them will be built in partnership with Champlain Housing Trust, a local Burlington nonprofit. The Slow to Start project plans to be completed in 2026. While some are hopeful for what the building will bring to the city, others feel as though Burlington may already be too far gone.
I think that Burlington lost a lot. Right now they're scrambling for affordable housing, and we had affordable housing. They took it and they built their big buildings and their expensive condos and built some big revenue properties that Burlington can subsist on. And I think that didn't do any good for anybody. They didn't learn anything from history. History is repeating itself, and we've got another mess there.
It was a community all by itself. They had the stores, they had grocery stores, they had apartments. I see the city trying to make that place all over again. They want stores, they want housing, and what did we have in the 60s? It was all there. It was all there.
Burlington, Vermont is one of the many cities across America that fell subject to urban renewal initiatives that were sweeping the nation in post-World War II America. The reimagining of American cities began with ideas of equity and prosperity for all. Today, we look back and wonder, how far have we really come?
There's a lot of people that don't like the idea of development, like I like the way things are. I mean, I like the way things are, but it's a balancing act, and you need to do some development to stimulate the economy, because the city can't grow.
Projects try to replicate the traditional New England town green. And they say, all right, we've got this plot of land, we're going to make a town square, we'll put a gazebo in it, and we'll put parking around the square, and then we'll ring it with 2 or 3-story buildings, retail on the ground floor, offices and apartments above, and voila, we've done it, we've created New England. And it rarely works, because what's missing is time.
Well, I don't see that area coming back as a closely knit community. I mourn the loss, but I realize it can't be replaced.
The Marola family of the store that I've talked about, their eldest son had died in World War II. And their reaction was, we gave our son to this country, and now you're taking our property, you're taking our home and our store and our livelihood. They destroyed lives. Urban renewal destroyed the lives of a lot of people.
157 families, individuals, and business owners were forced to give up their homes and community in the name of new growth and progress for the city of Burlington. 65 years later, there's still a hole in the ground, a hole in the memories of the city, and a hole in the hearts of the people of Burlington.
go to your office. I know that's not what you want to hear, but we can offer you.
What would you do?
We've reserved the surgery for Molly for Monday, but Arthur, unless you can pay the deposit, we can only hold it through tomorrow.
I see many options. You must choose
Which one?
the right one.
Which is?
The answer is already within you.
So, after 3 months, that'll be your total.
That's a lot of interest.
Well, we really will do anything for our pets, won't we?
So what about your parents?
They won't even give me money for rent.
She's lived a good life, Artie.
Don't. I can't think about that right now.
You know, Richard always said it was worse than it looked. And we know it didn't look good.
He stayed as long as he could.
He also knew what was happening.
So you think I should do it?
When Richard saw you drunk in the street, he took you in because it was the right thing to do, and he had the power to do it. You owe the same now to Molly.
Molly? This one will hurt, but we'll be together. This one might not be possible. And this one will be quick, but sad. Okay, Molly, you have to choose. Come on, girl, you can do it. Come on. That's not an option. Molly, you remember this place. Come on. We're almost there, girl. Come on. Come on, Molly. When Richard was on that breathing machine, how did you know it was time to...
You don't know. You just hope.
But it was the right decision.
It was what it was.
That's reassuring. If you... Well, you know, if you had the opportunity to do it again, would you do it the same way?
You know, I can't tell you what to do. Life is full of decisions. You have to either make them or get left in the dust.
Why can't I just let life happen?
Because it's painful. Sitting with Molly while she can't move will be painful. When she can't eat, she can't feel, she can't breathe. You can ask everyone you know what they would do, but it doesn't change a thing. At the end of the day, you have to come to terms with it, not them.
Like you have? Carrying around that picture of Richard like he's still here? He's not! All right? He's buried 6 feet under the dirt, and he's never coming back because of you.
So I can do it myself or with you in the room.
Whatever's easier.
And we can do a private cremation or with multiple animals.
That's fine.
We have a variety of urns that you can choose from if you want. Some people do.
Vermont Public, partnering with local filmmakers to bring you stories made here. For more, visit vermontpublic.org.